one of the biggest misconceptions I used to have about healing was that I believe that healing begins when that pain finally goes away, when I will finally stop missing them, when I will stop thinking about them, when I will stop caring. But I soon found out that healing doesn't start there. I found that healing actually begins much earlier than that. And actually, healing really begins the moment that you detach. And I know that to a lot of people, the word detachment sounds cold, it sounds distant or unloving, but that is not what detachment really is. Detachment is actually the foundation of a healthy, secure relationship with yourself and others, because detachment is the opposite of attachment. And attachment is what makes relationships unhealthy and insecure. So detachment isn't pretending that you do not care. It isn't becoming emotionally unavailable. And it isn't also about convincing yourself that you don't want love. Detachment is simply deciding that your happiness, your identity, and your worth, they no longer depend on something outside of you. It's something that is dependent and decided by you internally. And I genuinely believe that detachment is the first step in healing almost everything. Whether that's a breakup, whether that's heartbreak, anxious attachment, a situationship, crush that you have placed on the pedestal, or even the idea of being in a relationship itself. Because really at the root of suffering is usually attachment. Whether that is attachment to the outcome, whether that is attachment to a specific person, attachment to a timeline, attachment to an idea, or whether that's attachment to who we thought we will become once we finally got the thing that we wanted. And the more attached we become, the more power we unconsciously give away. Hi guys, I'm Andriana. Welcome back to my channel. So today we're talking about how detachment is the first step to healing. Like many other people, I spent many years thinking that attachment equaled love, that attachment meant love, that if I was constantly thinking about someone, missing them, or worrying about losing them, it meant that they were important. But looking back, I realized that most of the time I wasn't experiencing love. I was experiencing dependence. Because when your emotional state rises and falls based on whether someone texts you, whether someone chooses you, whether someone commits to you or stays, you have unknowingly made them responsible for your happiness. And that's a lot of pressure to put on another human being. So one of my favorite quotes about this says that attachment is saying that I love you, therefore I can't live without you. But detachment is saying I love you, but I know I will be okay without you. And I think that's the key difference between anxious love and secure love. Secure people are still able to love as deeply as anxiously attached people or insecurely attached people, but they know to not abandon themselves in the process. I genuinely think that one of the biggest signs that you have put something on the pedestal is that you place it above yourself. Whether you place your partner above yourself, whether you place your crush above yourself, whether you place your ex, whether you place being in a relationship above yourself. And so without realizing it, you have moved yourself to the bottom of your own life, because all of these things have been put on a higher level than you. So you subconsciously see yourself as something lower. If you look closely at how attachment speaks, it sounds something like that. It says like, well, their opinion matters more than mine, their needs matter more than mine, their presence is what is going to determine my happiness and my safety, and their validation is going to determine my worth. Their choice is going to determine whether I feel I am deserving and whether I feel lovable. And when that happens, healing becomes almost impossible. And that is because you have unconsciously made yourself dependent on something external, something outside of you. Detachment changes that. Detachment says that I still desire this, but I no longer depend on it. And that is what is able to change everything. For me, one of the biggest mindset shifts that changed my life was realizing that detachment is not about loving someone less, but it's more about putting yourself back into the center of your own life. So when I became secure, I was able to finally see things the way that secure people understand. And secure people don't put themselves beneath their relationships. They don't place their worth in someone else's hands. They don't make one person responsible for creating like a meaningful life for them. They are able to remain on top. They are able to stay grounded. And from that place, they're able to love more freely without any attachments, without any expectations. And that's because there's no pressure. There's no desperation. There's not trying to hold on. It's just two whole and complete people who are choosing to share a life together. And I honestly think that this is why detachment feels so uncomfortable for people at first. And it's because detachment requires us to let go of that illusion of control, that idea that when we control things, things are safer. You know, it's so hard to accept that we cannot control who chooses us, who leaves us, when love will arrive in our lives, how long some people will stay, and what will happen next. And I know that is very terrifying. I know that is very scary because our attachment whispers to us and is trying to convince us that, well, if I think about it enough, if I worry about it enough, if I overanalyze it enough or hold on tightly enough, maybe I can control the outcome and maybe I can keep me safe. But life doesn't work that way, and neither does love. It really helped me to understand that my anxious attachment was speaking out of fear and out of doubt because it wanted to protect me from the feeling of abandonment that left me in survival in the past. And I think one of the most powerful questions that you can ask yourself when you're suffering with this is that, well, what am I attached to? And instead of asking, why is this happening to me, and catastrophizing, focus on more like, what am I unwilling to let go of? What am I still trying to control? Because usually the answer isn't the person, it's what they represent. We're usually attached to the feeling that we think that person will give us, whether that will make us feel chosen, feel significant, feel lovable, feel secure. We're also attached to the future that we imagine with them. We're attached to the identity that we would have had and the life that we thought we were going to live if they become that. And that is why heartbreak hurts so much. It's not just that we're grieving these people that we lose from our lives, but we're also grieving the possibilities. We are grieving the possibility of a reality that we so much desired and hoped to finally get to experience. Ironically, detachment is often the very thing that allows us to receive what we want. And that is because when you stop needing something, you stop chasing it. And when you stop chasing it, you stop forcing it. And then when you stop forcing it, you finally create space for it. I mean, think about it. How many people meet their partner after they have finally stopped obsessing over finding the one? How many people attract healthier relationships after they have learned how to be happy on their own? How many people reconnect with themselves after a breakup and they realize how they have slowly abandoned themselves in that relationship? Detachment is not giving up. It's really about like letting go and trusting and saying that I trust that what is meant for me will not require me to betray myself. And I think that is one of the most secure beliefs that a person can have. Having that belief that like gave me more faith and trust, it allowed me to relax and to not try to hold on control all the time and think that it was in my power all the time. That is again an illusion. So these are the mindset shifts that completely changed the way that I understood healing and the way that I allowed detachment to get me there as the first step. For each point, I'm going to also give you a book recommendation that really solidified that belief for me and helped me understand it on not only on a conscious level but on a deeper subconscious level to really change the way I've seen that belief and create a new experience for me. So the first one was learning to stop putting people on pedestals. The thing is that the moment you place someone above yourself, you automatically place yourself beneath them. So what I did here was to ask myself these questions. Well, I was asking, have I made this person my source of happiness? Have I made their validation mean something about my own worth? Have I forgotten who I was before I met them? By asking this question, it allowed me to slowly click and realize that, well, no one really belongs on a pedestal. No ex, not any crush, not even my future partner, and certainly not the idea of being in a relationship. So if you spend your life placing other people above yourself, I cannot recommend enough the book called The Women Who Run with the Wolves. Honestly, it's one of those books that reminds women who they were before the world taught them how to abandon themselves for love, to abandon themselves for others. And reading it really felt like it reminded parts of myself that I had forgotten. And this is obviously a book that goes deeper than that, and I really think that is mandatory reading for any woman. So if you're interested, I think the core takeaways that I took from it is that it's firstly embracing our cycles. Just like wolves and nature, we women have natural cycles of high energy, creativity, and then resting and retreating into solitude. Another takeaway is listening to our intuition. So that is about paying attention to the body's internal warning signals and our prompts that we get, rather than overriding them for the sake of social approval, for the sake of approval from men. It was speaking about reclaiming our voice, and here it was talking about learning how to howl, which means like fully expressing our own truth, expressing our own boundaries and our anger without any shame, without any guilt. So this is a read that will really teach you to learn about our nature as women and how to honor us and put us on the pedestal, rather than denying ourselves and trying to fit in the patriarchal box. The second mindset shift was realizing that attachment is usually a need in disguise. We are really rarely attached to the person, but what we are attached to is what we believe that that person can give us, whether that's love, whether that's safety, whether that's validation, whether that's security or significance. And once I realized that, I could finally begin learning how to provide those things to myself. So for this point, one book that completely changed the way that I view relationships is the book called The Eden Project by James Hollis. So this book explores the idea that we are rarely attached to people themselves, and that we are attached to what we believe they will give us. So it was one of the first books that made me realize that my suffering had very little to do with other people and how they were not meeting me, and it had everything to do with my own unmet needs that I was personally carrying and I was simply projecting onto them. This book really challenges like the cultural fantasy that a romantic partner will come and rescue us from our inner emptiness, our lack of meaning, and is going to heal all of our wounds and is going to love us so much that it's going to make us feel alright. And so it breaks this illusion that it's going to provide for us a return to paradise, the Eden. And instead, what it says that true maturity requires personal responsibility and individual psychological growth. So it's on our own hands to really take that personal responsibility to heal us, to heal those parts of us. I think this is mandatory reading for any person that is struggling with this idea of waiting for someone else to come and deliver them from their suffering. This book really speaks about this illusion of Eden, where we unconsciously look for a magical other so we can recreate the total safety and the total care of our early childhood. And then that leads to the danger of projection, which is when we are placing our unfulfilled needs onto a partner. We are basically placing an unfair burden on them, which is what usually ruins the relationship. And it's also talking about how we're searching for rescue by us expecting another person to fix our fears and to fix our loneliness, it really as a result stops us from growing up. What is growing up and maturing is taking responsibility, and that involves taking responsibility for our own lives and taking care of ourselves. We're no longer having parents or someone else to take care of those needs for us. We need to become that parent for ourselves. And it also speaks about that the path to healthy connection is firstly owning your past. So that means recognizing how your childhood fears and your old wounds and hurts shape what you demand from a partner. It then goes to focus on self-awe. So that speaks about doing the inner work to heal yourself rather than waiting for someone else to save you. And thirdly, on confronting reality, which is to accept that a partner is a separate human being and not a magical fix. It's not a magician who's gonna come into your life and move his wand, magically every problem that you used to have disappears. Okay, the second mindset shift is putting yourself back at the center of your own life. I love the idea that detachment simply means putting yourself back on top. It means becoming your own source, becoming your own ecosystem. Your life should never look like this, where first comes the partner, second your friends, then your family, and then you. Your list of priorities should look like this. First you, and your relationship with yourself. Second, your relationship with the people that you love, and then everything else. Because if you abandon yourself every time love comes into your life, if you immediately shift your priority list every time someone comes into your life, you're going to spend your entire life trying to find yourself again, because you yourself won't be happy, because you putting yourself last on your priority list might feel necessary in the moment, or what makes you happy in the moment, but in the long term will make you unhappy and it will make you feel resentment. If you ever lost yourself in relationships, the book called Untamed by Glennon Doyle is really one of the books that remind you that our life belongs to us first. So this is a book about coming home to yourself and realizing that maybe, you've spent your entire life asking for permission to become who you already are. So this book is a very powerful memoir and a very important wake-up call about breaking free from societal expectations, and it really focuses on self-discovery and listening to your inner voice and rejecting the pressure to please everyone. So I feel if you're someone that is used to putting someone else's opinions, someone else's desires, and someone else's wants and needs first in your priority list, this will really help you shift that and learn how that waiting for that permission from others, no one will come and tell you by giving you that permission, now you're allowed to put yourself first. You need to be the one that says that to you. The fourth mindset shift for this is that you have to stop confusing attachment with love. The way to differentiate that is that attachment says that I need you, while love is saying that I choose you. Attachment is saying that without you I'm incomplete, when love is saying that I was whole before you and I will remain whole beside you. Attachment is saying, please don't leave me, please don't abandon me. And love says, I hope you stay, but I know I will be okay if you don't. And I think that is what secure love sounds like. For this point, there's a passage from a book that really hits the nail with this, and this is a passage from The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. It's so simple but so on point. In this passage, he writes that let there be space in your togetherness. And I think that is exactly what secure love is, when two people are standing side by side and not one person disappearing into another. And what this passage is trying to say is that partners should keep their own identity, should keep their own freedom, instead of depending on each other for everything. The next mindset shift was accepting that you cannot control outcomes. Healing begins when you stop negotiating with your reality. And this is a really huge one in helping you detach. It's when you understand that you cannot force someone to choose you. You cannot force the right timing. You cannot force love, and you cannot force people to become who you need them to be. It's understanding that the only thing that you can control is yourself and therefore who you choose to become, choosing your reactions, choosing your identity, your behavior, your thoughts. And that's where actually your power has always been, but you have not seen, you have not understood. You thought that it was in your power to control, to force, to make someone change and to make someone love you by loving them more and hoping that one day they will see that, well, they love me so much, they show up for me this much, I will do the same now. I will meet them back. If uncertainty is something that terrifies you, I will really recommend the book called When Things Fall Apart. It's one of the most comforting books I've ever read because it really teaches you that life isn't asking us to control everything. And what life actually asks us is to trust ourselves enough to navigate whatever happens. So this is a book by Pima Chodron, and this is basically a guide on how to face pain, fear, uncertainty. And the core message is that true peace comes from stopping our escape, stopping running away from our suffering, and accepting actually the ever-changing nature of life, how life is constantly changing and constantly shifting, and building more self-compassion for that. And finally, the last mindset shift on this is honestly that detachment isn't the absence of desire. And this is very important. When I became detached, it didn't mean that I stopped wanting love, it didn't mean that I stopped wanting a relationship, or that I became so unavailable and so like careless and selfish and self-involved. It just meant that my life no longer depended on whether or not I had that relationship or whether I had that love. And it allowed me to be in a place where I could deeply desire a relationship while simultaneously knowing that my life is beautiful with or without it. And this is one of the most freeing and one of the most beautiful places that you can arrive at, especially as a woman. Like, we are going to spend so much of our lives nurturing relationships, nurturing others, and I think having a moment in our lives where we can nurture ourselves and nurture a beautiful life for ourselves without the responsibility of nurturing all other people at the same time is like so important and so key. And I think there's nothing I will recommend more than that. And I think the book that captures this detachment better than anything else I've read before is a book called The Wisdom of Insecurity by Alan Watts. And this book really taught me that so much of our suffering, it comes from trying to hold on to things that were never meant to be possessed in the first place. It really reminded me that we can still deeply desire something while simultaneously being at peace without it, being content without it, feel complete and whole without having it. And it really explains that our constant search for safety and for certainty, it really is what causes such deep anxiety and such deep insecurity in our lives, because life always changes. Us trying to hold on to things, trying to hold on to control will always fail. And so that true peace is only going to come from accepting this truth and living in the present, living in the peace of mind that, well, maybe I don't have what I want, I still desire it, and I'm okay with or without it. Ironically, I think that detachment is what allows us to love more deeply, because when you're no longer trying to possess, to trying to control, or to hold onto someone, you can finally appreciate them for who they truly are and how they truly choose to stay there, and not for who you need them to be. You get to love them more genuinely because you love the person genuinely and how they really show up and behave, and you don't just focus on what you need them to be and how they fulfill you. So the goal isn't to become someone who doesn't care, but the goal is to become someone who understands that their happiness, that their worth, that their identity were never supposed to live in someone else's hands. Were never meant to be delegated to another person somewhere outside of them. And when I finally realized that my healing won't begin when I finally stop thinking about them, but it will begin the moment that I put myself back at the center of my own life, that's when this truth really set me free. And I finally knew what I had to do. What I had to do was to detach. And I genuinely believe that detachment is the first step. And I know that this is exactly what allowed me to not only heal my anxious attachment and become secure in my relationships, but to become secure in life. Because the value and importance of detachment is that big. So that's it for today, guys. It's getting dark. So I will speak to you on the next one. Bye.